Bum, hello, hello, hello. Hi there, everybody. We're live. Oh, let's see what happens. Oh, we're live. I'm trying to send a message. Accept all cookies. Been live. No, this is not working. Hold on. Okay. Yes. Live. Greetings, everybody. Da, da, da. I know. It's a new device. Yeah, I hate it too. It's a stupid. Greetings, everybody. We already have a hi there, everybody. I'm up and live. We're in our minute. Um, well, yeah, the computer's back. Yay! It's fixed. My computer was. I told you the computer disaster. We got it came back on Wednesday. We installed it. It got completely wiped out. New computer. I had to reinstall programs, and it was fucking teeth pulling, and a lot of things are not there. All the old memory card is now over here. Jason externalized, and therefore a lot of things that were used to be there and not there now. I have to go hunt it down. It's been kind of like doing things. I recorded some videos, so I'm caught up at least a week. I recorded some more Machiavelli. We're up. We're getting in there. We added a week of videos, maybe a week and a half of videos. I just finished one today. I was going to do some things. I had other things to do, and I got kind of chopped up. I came late to my office. I was kind of feeling. I'm still kind of feeling yucky. It's the weather. It's yucky. It's cloudy, cold. I have a piece out. I don't know what to say. It's like I have a new piece out. Where is it? Oh, I have to go look at it. Hold on. I have a new piece out. I'll put it in the. History. Okay. Oh, it's out, and it is. Yeah, out. I'll get it for you guys. Oops. Oh, it's a little annoying when I go between screens. It does have a funny thing. Here's my piece that the Miskatonian, it's on Huntington. It's going to be as the first of two parts. It was a big piece. I'd have had broken up. I know they're gonna have to break it up into two parts. And the first part was already out on the 24th, and the next probably be on Monday, coming out Sunday and Monday. It's on Huntington on political order. I first deal with the political order problem and the nature of his approach to political order, and then I deal with it in with that next chapter, which the second part will be looking. I'm comparing him to Aristotle and showing how. Yeah, I'm not sure. I think Aristotle's still superior, but I can see how Huntington's approach, because of industrialization and things like that, addresses certain things that Aristotle just didn't foresee yet. It was so it's a very useful evaluation. Another thing I got, it finally came. It's been in mail. This is my third attempt to try to get a copy of this Yale book on political equality. This is Robert Dahl's last book. It was published in 2008, 2006, 2008. Yeah, 2006. This is his last book on political equality. You have to remember, Dahl and Huntington are contemporaries at this point. You know, they were some of the great American political scientists in the last century. Dahl was part of the behavioral revolution. Huntington was kind of adjacent to it, not totally critical of it, but also not embracing it totally. He was a little skeptical. I would equate Huntington to someone like Samuel Feiner, who was a very big critic of the behavioralists. Dahl was very much with Gabriel Almond and Lucian Pye and the whole tradition of the behavioral revolution of the 1950s, second post-war behavioralists, as it turns to the global scene and the international scene. So my Huntington piece is a very good thing. I should kind of, like I said, I have two things to kind of do. I have to get my paper ready for the conference. Oh, also, okay, this is March. Tomorrow will be March 1st. I have less than a month. I have to really write my paper. I have to rewrite and draft my paper that's due April 1st for American Affairs. I've been a bad boy. I should really just get off my ass and do it on nationalism, on the tension between. I'm basically supporting and working off of Bernard Jach's argument that there's no real, the so-called difference between civic nationalism and ethnic nationalism ultimately disappears. Civic nationalism over time becomes an ethnicity. So therefore, there's this big fight about, in other words, civic nationalism becomes an ethnicity over time. And therefore, this idea that this is really a big, huge difference. Yes, there is some difference, and there's a tendency of certain things that one can do that the other cannot. But even the other one even civic nationalism needs to concern itself with homogeneity and the problem of the problem of what do you call heterogeneity and homogeneity that's essential to a good political order, and the question of tied to the questions of social trust and social capital. Yes, there is an advantage to a civic order that allows for diverse groups to come into it, but there still needs to be a what do we call a certain balance towards it. Now, therefore, I'm going to be looking at it's mostly written. The editor gave me some comments and suggestions, and I also I'm going to address what I call the German issue, how the Germans in their post-war effort sought to run away from ethnic nationalism because of Hitler, and I should kind of write about that. Hitler is not the example of Hitler as ethnic nationalism is a misleading thing, because technically the Nazis were betrayers of true German nationalism, because they sought to even destroy German nationalism. The Germans themselves would be they were idealists. The Nazis were fundamental, not necessarily Hitler, but the true Nazis, the true hardcore theoretical Nazis, argued for the idea of the Aryan race, which was going to be, and recovering that Aryan race would require the extermination of the inferior peoples, including much of the German race, much of German people. In other words, it wasn't not a nationalism in the sense that it was nationalisms tend to be particularists in these things. No, this was what was going here was like Marxism, where okay, Marxism, it's class-based. It's the workers will need to get control of the world, and we need to exterminate the other classes who will threaten the control by the workers. Okay, and they have to exterminate all the other things, the other classes, so that you need to, you know, that you can achieve over time the worker democracy dictatorship will eventually emerge into communism. Okay, that because all the other elements of capitalism, all the other thing of class and ownership, private ownership, are just simply just forgotten over time, right? That's the Marxist conception. The Nazi conception does the same. What the Marxist does with class, the Nazis do with race and ethnicity. So they posit a specific racial identity. This is the Aryan, and it assumes it as a end goal. Now, so therefore, my argument is that people say, "Oh, nationalism, Nazism is the logical position of nationalism leads to Nazis." No, the Nazis are the ideology is a globalist, universalist new man. This is a new man. The Nazi is like Soviet man. The Aryan man is a new construction that is going to be the new direction of humanity. Okay, so it is not. I would follow the language of Vogelin. This is a Gnosticism. This is like Marxism. There's a Gnostic construction of knowledge that overturns existing experience of things to a new direction of things. And this is what drives the situation, and that's why it's such danger. This is why totalitarianism is both as a construct, mental construct. It is a distortive mental construct, as much as it is a problem politically. And this is why it's a misnomer to say, well, because of Hitler, we have to nationalism always leads to Nazism. I think Arendt is right that what leads to Nazism is not nationalism per se, but pan-Germanism. Okay, and I think Arendt's Origins of Totalitarianism hits this. It's imperialism, this globalizational thing of a new ideal type, and the idea of the Germanicism, this pan-Germanicism, was going to unify. And we have to understand that this is a problem of, now this is tied to the German question because of the fact that there's too many German countries and the people are supposed to spread out. The idea that all the German peoples need us to come together. That therefore this leads to a fact that the German, this leads to an imperialism. Now, the difference was that the pan-Germanic forces were not necessarily those who constructed Germany, the German Reich. It was yes, the forces, this is the whole problem there. The forces of nationalism, the desire for the Germans to have their own nation, is a byproduct of the French Revolution. Here, Leo Strauss, in his kind of autographical preface to his Spinoza book, that was the English language version of it, does this wonderful short little blurb about that, which I think is still the best explanation to understand the forces of what led Germany to go a certain way. What is so shocking here about this is to understand the German. This is the problem. This is the German direction of nationalism. Why nationalism occurs as a byproduct of liberalism. Okay, you have to understand that 19th century nationalism and liberalism are hand in hand in the Germanic experience. The problem with this is the reality of Germanic, the spread outness of the Germanic peoples, because of the effects of what things like the 30-Year War, the different Germanic tribes spreading out and spreading all over the place, that the various aspects of what German meant was all so spread out and so wide and so diverse because of how the Germanic tribes evolved and spread. Therefore, the idea of the creation of something Germanic was tied. Now, the thing about this is that the real champion, of course, the liberals were one, but also the Austrian-Hungary, the rebirth of Austria, the Habsburg rebirth after Napoleon's destruction of the Holy Roman Empire, right? the Battle of the Three Emperors, which then destroys his victory over the emperors, and that he forces a peace on a peace that destroys, dissolves the Holy Roman Empire, right? And what happens to Austria? Well, Austria and Hungary becomes an empire again. The Kaiser gives up his empire, the Holy Roman Empire, but he becomes the Kaiser of an empire of what? Of Austria and Hungary, right? The dual kingdoms. And this becomes the Austro-Hungarian Empire, right? The Kaiser is still Kaiser, but now instead of being the emperor of the Holy Roman Empire, he's now emperor of the two kingdoms. And this is a multiracial, multi-ethnic problem. But the Habsburg family is fundamentally, by this time, is Germanic. And the leading elite behind the Austrian Empire is Germanic. There is a strong Hungarian element, and there's this clash between the Hungarian and the Germanic, right? But it is the Austrians that are the champions of the pan-German of pan-Germanicism. The Prussian rule. The Prussians are they have no desire. The Prussians are no fanboys of either the creation of Germany. They're not They're not nationalists. The Prussian elite, the Prussian regime, the Prussian monarchy is anti-nationalist, anti-liberal. Both because remember, at this time, at the origins of it was seen as both nationalism and liberalism were hand in hand. Now, why am I saying this? I'm getting my off on this point, because the German experience is a very odd thing here. And if we understand the German experience, in other words, this debate becomes warped. And this is the problem of the Nazis. The Nazis aren't really, a lot of it is basically an Austrian. National Socialism owes more to the Austrian problem, the tensions and conceptions of the multiracial ethnic reality that is Austria-Hungary, than per se Prussia or original Germany. Now, there will be Prussia will dominate over Poles, and it will partition Poland and have a significant proportion of Poland. But the Prussia was never multi-ethnic. There was less multi-ethnicity in Prussia. Yes, sure, there's the Poles, but mostly they integrated the Poles they were Germanized, they were Prussianized, and they were brought in, or they were treated as serfs in that sense. But if you look at the creation of Germany via Prussia, this is why the nationalists hated this. They called it ersatz. Much of the real nationalist critics will look at what the empire is created because of Bismarck as ersatz Germany. Ersatz Germany, not real Germany. This is a Prussia Germany. It's not wholly. In fact, this is what Strauss highlights. It's the First Reich is if the First Reich is the Holy Roman Empire, the Second Reich is which comes at ersatz Germany, the really mean Germany. It is longing for the Third Reich. That the Third Reich is all the Germans at the time of the turn of the 20th century, even before World War I. It was a contempt of this Prussian Germany, and that there was a desire to overturn this. Now, why is this little talking about the German example? I think the German example misleads us in that sense for the Prussian, this idea, and that therefore the idea that Nazis discredits nationalism. No, I think and therefore we have to look at the response. See, much of the post-World War II response is this, because of Nazism, we must fight nationalism. So instead of nationalism, the idea of constitutional patriotism, this is what, this is the idea of patriotism becomes the root. And it's this tension between what some people would like nationalism, don't like patriotism. And the idea is that patriotism is usually the realm. The argument is that those who believe in civic nationalist identities seem to dislike the term nationalism, and thus turn to they prefer the concept of patriotism. But then what happened was the left, basically the kind of, okay, we can say this is the liberals who kind of wish to radicalize the Riksdag, the constitutional state, the Riksdag, as a kind of protection of the liberal state. The liberal state is the Riksdag. In other words, and therefore the restoration of the basic law establishes a new liberal state, and therefore the liberal state had to fight against, the liberal state had to fight against the more traditional forces of populism and people's rule. And thus, this is why nationalism became the bad word. And that therefore patriotism, but constitutional patriotism in that sense. You're patriotic not for the country, but you're patriotic for the Constitution. So therefore, that it wasn't tied to the people, not tied to that, but tied to an idea. Now, one of the big voices on constitutional principle is Habermas. Habermas was his idea of civic discourse and discursive structures of entities. Now, Habermas is weird because Habermas, yes, you can say he's Frankfurt School, but he's not completely Frankfurt School. He's less of the. He is ultimately goes in a direction of post-positivistic. He embraces some aspects of the positivistic logic, but then embraces it kind of in a Kantian framework, that rather than a Marxist framework in that sense. I have to talk about this some more and think about this some more. I think there is this direction, and there's this whole, the whole writing in Germany of this post-war about the Constitution. And I talk about this in the paper, and I need to expand it like maybe 2 or 3 paragraphs a little bit. So I plan to spend some time on that. I need to finish my Alain Benissot piece. It's done. I just have to add some notes to it. I need to send it out. I haven't heard anything back yet of the form piece. I'm waiting for my Oakshott piece to get published by the Kronos. The political form piece I haven't heard back, and will hopefully get approved by the political science journal that I sent it to in Poland, the Polish one. The Benissot piece I probably will send to, I don't know, I want to send it to the History of European Ideas, but I got a feeling that they will balk at it. So, but if I send it to the History of European, I have to make everything footnotes, and that's a pain in the ass. So I'm going to try to do that quickly. I'll do that maybe writing the same time, and it gives me some time. And then I have to do something about the De La Mora piece that I have. I'm not sure I want it to send to the European Conservative now. I'm kind of like, because it's too long. What I have I think is too long, and for what they want. And I'm kind of like, I'm going to send it to them saying, listen, I think it's too long for what you want. I addressed the criticism that they gave and try to do it and try to address it, but it becomes too long, and he doesn't want. I think they want a much shorter piece. So I'm going to kind of chicken out on that and maybe send it to someplace else. I don't know. We'll see what happens. I might send it to, I might say, hey, would you like this? If you like this piece, I might just do that way and just send it and say, would you like this to Kronos? Maybe Kronos would like it, but I don't think so. Um, I'm kind of, I think it's a little too short for Chronos. I have to go look at it some more. We'll see what happens. I have to go do it. The second thing is what else? I need to finish my paper for the conference. It's written. I just have to put some footnotes and references. I have to write the thing. On April 2nd, we fly out, going to Chicago, and we'll be there for like the weekend, and then we come back on Monday. My teaching right now, I'm busy teaching in the sense that my Norwich class, International Law, we're doing today. This week we've had a group of 4 that turned into a group of 3, and this is like a small group, and we're doing the beginning of the international system of law in terms of the creation of the basis between structures of hierarchy of law and the question of treaties and destructions of treaties, and this tension between customary law versus treaty law. This idea of non-voluntary law versus voluntary law. So that's something. I should write something on that a little bit, because I think there is this very interesting point in political theory about this tension between the voluntary and voluntary. My Mexican colleague is working on not La Casa, but also the other guy, the early Spanish churchmen in the Italy and the New World, and he is very much interesting, and he's been trying to get these things. And there is the problem about he wants to make an argument. I can see where he wants to go. He wants to argue against the kind of Anglo-Saxon argument. He's clearly a man of the left, but he is he went to school in England, so he's surprised that, oh my God, why didn't I experience all these authors, this alternative tradition of political theory? Well, because the Anglo-American tradition doesn't like this. It doesn't see this. It doesn't understand this. Because of the Anglo-American tradition has this very specific individualistic structure of concepts of the individual that, and it follows a tradition of Hobbes, Locke, and everyone that comes from that goes in this very specific direction. That, yes, later thinkers like Kant and Hobbes, via Rousseau, follows this, and it becomes the radical direction that it takes. But it's still fundamentally based on the Hobbesian individualism. Okay, the conceptual individualism of the Hobbesian frame. Now, what's so interesting? You can argue that there is this medieval tradition that happens because, and how Machiavelli hits the medieval tradition in 2 directions. One is the Spanish direction. The French direction goes one way. The French direction goes with clearly, and remember this: it's the French direction that'll have impact on America, on England, on Hobbes. It will be Baudin. It will be Baudin. Baudin's Machiavelli's influence on Baudin, and Baudin's restructuring of what the political form, and trying to retake the French dynastic monarchy and shape it to frame it within the logic of what the Machiavellian state. Okay, what is so interesting, and I think this has always been a very interesting part about my thing of Baudin. I think Baudin is probably one of the most important writers that perhaps needs more attention than. If I was a younger person, I would recommend someone start taking on Baudin. Baudin is probably the most important political thinker. This transition moment in there, and he needs to be rethought. Not as I think this idea of the absolutist versus not. I think there's a misunderstanding of Baudin that comes from both the Hobbesian, this Anglo-Saxon tradition, but also the European tradition. And it sees him as an absolutist, this idea of the absolutism and the question of absolutism and republican. You can see Baudin as the challenger to someone like This is what um, what's his name? I'm blanking. I just talking about Elaine. Oh, come on! I just said it. The one I was trying to write my paper on. De Bonasset, Alain de Bonasset, in the piece on sovereignty, which deals with this. He wants to point to what is this? Ioannis Alusia in his Politica, and this kind of this idea of the decentralized federalism, a federated structure of political life that follows and echoes with a kind of, what is the word I'm looking for? It is the conceptions of subsidiarity, of political rule, in other words, this idea of compartments and just this jurisdictional structures of political life that echoes the medieval world in that sense. But with Baudin, there is this Machiavellian urge to unify, centralize, because this is a more powerful state. This is the lesson that Machiavelli teaches about the tension between France, the weakness of France, the strengths and weaknesses of decentralization and centralization, in the famous chapter on the Prince, on the the heirs of Alexander. What was that? That's on chapter. The heirs of Alexander. This is chapter 4 of the Prince. Why the kingdom of Darius, which Alexander had seized, did not rebel against the successors after the death of Alexander. Right. That's this, and this tension between the idea of this structure of this. So this leads us to the problem. This is the fundamental political problem. Now I can see why he's saying, okay, my colleague is talking about the Spanish tradition. Well, if Baudin leads one way, the Spanish tradition goes a different way, because of and it will shape the Austrian, because through Habsburgs. The Spanish, La Casa and the other guy. Okay, my brain is freaking out. It's La Casa. Who else? It's yeah. La Casa, Suarez, of course, but Suarez, La Casa, Vitario. La Casa is always important to do this. Yeah. Come on, there's other one that I'm going completely. Well, I'm not going to get. I mean, let's just stop for a second and not completely. Okay, glad you're live. Okay, thanks. What's so interesting about the Spanish position that comes up because of through Suarez in this is a Machiavellianism that alters it, takes a Thomistic conception of scholasticism, and through the churchmen embraces a Machiavellianism. You can see this with Botaro a little bit. You see this in Botaro, the Italian writer Botaro, Giovanni Bottaro's in his Reason of State. You can see this whole argument is also echoed in what's his name, from Politics to Reason of State, by the Italian author who used to be at Princeton but left Princeton to go to Austin. I don't wanna eeks. No, it's gonna drive me crazy now. I know the name. It must be. I'm trying to think of the guy's name now. It's going to drive me. Vitero becomes V. He's an older guy. Translated a lot of Machiavelli with Quentin Skinner. He was with Quentin Skinner and those guys. Well, his famous book From Politics to Reason of State is a very important history how the language changed. And Bottaro's Reason of State is the clear case of how Machiavelli overcame the scholastic writing. And someone like Suarez is a perfect example of embraces elements of Machiavelli and adapts it to the Thomistic tradition, changes Thomistic tradition to make it compatible to justify the changes in the Spanish rule. In other words, justify the Ferdinand's actions and Ferdinand's justification. And that's much of, again, this is what they do. They will, these Spanish Jesuits will use it to, use the state, use this new philosophy to change and adapt Catholic political teaching of the time to the new conception of centralization of power, dynastic rule, and the idea of political power under the first Ferdinand, and that is under Ferdinand the Great centralizer and the great establishment, and then his daughter's marriage to the Habsburg and the transferring of that to the Habsburg dynasty. And the Habsburgs continue and embraces through the grandson Charles V becoming the Holy Roman Emperor, right? That would never have been possible without the Spanish wealth that the New World offered, and allowed him to buy the electors. This is how this works in that sense, and thus with it the justification and the political theory of this is the element of it. The problem with this is that it doesn't stay. It stays in Spain, but it doesn't go to Germany. It's so funny that when the Austrians go to Germany, they kind of go hardcore Thomistic. The church doesn't like these people. They don't trust the Jesuits. They don't trust them. So therefore, and that's why Schmidt's dictatorship is a very interesting account of what happened in the Holy Roman Empire and the failure of the Holy Roman Empire to effectively moderate and modernize or to adapt to the new changing political reality. So again, this is my colleague's work on this. I'm going to wait to hear this. Now, I know this. I know myself in this. This is my kind of interest in this Bodin. I'm more interested in the Bodin direction. I know there's a Spanish direction of this, but I think it leads to empire. It does lead to empire. The French one leads to a different direction. I don't think the French one does lead to empire under Bodin. In other words, Bodin's direction creates a dynastic rule. A dynastic rule that deals with the state. But the problem is, I think Alain Benissat does highlight this, the logic of the state, that the once you get Bodin, it is only one little step to Hobbes. And then once you take that step to Hobbes, there's no going back. Okay, you're talking about no idea. They're talking about I'm sorry, this is about history of political thought. We're dealing with the ideas of sovereignty and the way sovereignty emerges, particularly with Baton, coming from the ideas of Machiavelli, where when it goes to the Spanish tradition of the Jesuits, it is a very fundamental difference. They have to maintain it within the framework of the scholastic tradition of natural law, and the importance of St. Thomas Aquinas' commentaries on the politics. So therefore, they're kind of always adopt. The Spanish Jesuits are always adapting this tradition of scholastic political thought, medieval scholastic political thought, and constantly introducing into it these Machiavellian themes. Now, we could even say, yes, they will always kind of point, at the same time they're pointing back to Aristotle, and because St. Thomas points back to Aristotle. So there is this kind of blurring between Aristotle and Machiavelli, okay? And it does so, but what it does is it imposes the modern language of Machiavelli on to Aristotelian domestic structures. And that is the major kind of scary idea of what's going on. And that does shape a direction of things. Now, that will interplay, that will have impact on England because of someone like Bellamy, who becomes Hobbes's greatest enemy, right? Because Bellamy seems to be one of the Jesuits who then goes in a direction of Aristotle. He seems to want to fight. He's clearly opposing. He's part of this Jesuit thing, but he's kind of opposing Suarez, the direction Suarez and the other part of the Spanish school goes into. So that's an interesting question in that, the Bellamy problem in that, because the liberals, in the 1940s, post-war, right following the Second World War, there was this reawakening of interest in Bellamy. As this Bellamy was this Democrat, he seemed to be favoring the Aristotelian account of democracy, favoring popular government democracy, and a man of the church, a Jesuit, a churchman, a not condemned churchman. It was something. Therefore, it was in other words a very interesting voice that was come up. Now you have to remember Bellamy's greatest enemy. I mean, the greatest enemy to Bellamy is Hobbes. Hobbes will look at Bellamy and say, no, this is what's really wrong. This is the attack on scholasticism is an attack that Hobbes makes in his Leviathan. The scholastics and their love of Aristotle and the dangers of that Aristotle has for political life, and the dangers of this is really also explicitly directed at Bellamy. And even more so if you look at the Latin edition of Leviathan, really at his attack on the extraditional chapters at the end, that he has the Latin edition has extra appendices on the issue of the creed that really kind of addresses this Bellamian defense of institutions of democracy, in that sense of the church's role in this, and that Hobbes kind of goes so. But that's that, and that's the fun, interesting moment that Hobbes becomes, as one point, yes, this takes us down a liberal dimension through Locke and so forth, and then the whole tradition that comes through liberalism through Rousseau's critique, then through Kant and Hegel, right, the new liberalism. But the Germanic tradition, that in the Germanic tradition, Hobbes' Leviathan and his De Civa play a very important role. It helps shape much of the ideas of Pufendorf. We remember Grotius, Hugo Grotius' thing, again influenced by this. It's Baudin and Grotius together in Suarez are at one moment of this international law, the fathers of modern international law. They're also the inheritors of Machiavelli. Baudin gives us the concept of sovereignty. He coins the concept of sovereignty and gives the argument for it. It's Grotius continues that concept. He likes it. He plays with it, but he then introduces the idea of the state of nature. He coins the concept of the state of nature, and then with that, it is between this interplay between Baudin and Grotius is Hobbes. Hobbes will. This is ultimately produces Hobbes in that sense. But Hobbes at the same time is responding to Descartes philosophically, the emergence of the philosophical tradition and the revolution that Descartes is going on. In fact, one of the interesting things in the introduction to Leviathan is a response to Descartes on the artificiality of mind, and can there be artificial persons? And Hobbes' answer is, oh yes. And that first and the most successful one is La State, Leviathan. So this is something I would think would be interesting to some people in that sense. So that's just been my kind of like the work writing. I really should do something on go back to. I need to go back and really do something about the American Affairs article that I owe them. It's due April 1st. It is written. I just have to go edit, change things. I could have done it in December. I was just kind of lazy. This has been a bad boy. The crap of the end of the semester, the dealing with student issues. A little exhausted about that, student issues. I have a couple students in this, and I have 2 students that are coming back. One student disappeared. He should be coming, doing a BA thesis. I have to sit with him for like at least 20 minutes to kind of get him to understand what he's doing wrong and how to fix it to get it right. And then the rest of the group has to start, my current group has to make progress. And then I have my class on federalism, which is, okay, their first assignment is due, and they have to write 7 little short answers. They do that like every other week, so I'm going to have like a lot of grading to do. That's going to be a pain in the ass. I'm going to just say if they do answer it correctly, and if they don't, why torture yourself? Why torture yourself in that sense? Then what is it? The next thing I have to do is my introduction to politics course, which we're on week 3 of that. So I'm going to be dealing with the again. I have two recorded of those lectures already done. I'm not recording it again. Look at this time. Maybe a year or so from now, I might record it again if I'm still alive. We'll see what happens. But that's the things now. Videos, I'm recording the Machiavelli's discourses. It's interesting. I'm still using the Tarkov and Mansfield edition for the purposes of the class. And what's interesting now is that I'm going back to this computer screen. When I was using my little laptop, the screen thing was much bigger. The fonts were bigger. So I kind of made the fonts bigger for this to make it. And I'm thinking, okay, that's good. It works better. It just it spreads things out more, but it does make it a little more readable for people. And I think that may be better in that sense. So, okay, that's a useful thing to do. And that's the basic thrust of what I've been up to. I was hoping to hear from somebody today. I didn't see Miss Corlitz at all. In the last couple of weeks, I'll be honest, I'm not happy. I wasn't necessarily happy with my my last 2 Friday sessions. My last 2 Friday session, I was still kind of recovering. I'll be honest, and the tech problems didn't make me feel better. and I'm still not happy with my lap. I mean, my laptop's still being fixed. Make it my replacement, my emergency laptop that I have here, my school laptop, but that one's still being dealt with. They fixed it. The battery died, so that's the other thing, and also has to have an upgrade on the memory card, something like that. Hoping that will be something that will work well. And then my little tablet thing is, I'm kind of frustrated about that because I want a normal tablet in that sense. And the problem with this is now the keyboard structure of it makes it very awkward to hold it and to do things. So it's been kind of crazy. Still, my old tablet still works on some things, but not everything. So it's like, it's kind of a, So that's just the technical issues. We'll see what happens. I know people. I haven't seen any real questions. I was waiting for Corlitz to make something. James to put something. I posted something to him. He asked me something a couple sessions ago about watching a video on about the question of Civil War, an English historian, English political science. I think he's a historian of political science, a historian at King's College in London. Was interviewed by a podcaster, and I think I probably posted on the link to it. And for him, and I posted the link of it so that some people who could come to see it. I'm just, I don't know. I'm kind of in a so mood about this. I think I think people talk Civil War, but not really. As I wrote into his comment, I think people are more talk than action, and I don't think people are more willing to put up if they feel they still have something or something they'd rather preserve the something they have than in other words, the only time that they will become revolutionary or that they will choose to engage in violence is when they engage in strife, honest rebellion and strife is when they have nothing to lose. And the problem with the English case is a great deal of the working class has been basically deracinated by socialism and the welfare state, and that therefore the families aren't intact and the structures are there and no identity, and then the breakdown of the family, the single motherism, and the likelihood of the single motherism being targeted by the Pakistani groups and other groups of multi-race ethnicity. Therefore, there's no identity in this situation. And in other words, and that yes, that some elements of the working class have memory. It's not. They're not large enough, and that they have been so marginalized that the middle class is against them. The relatively prosperous middle class that is dying. It's becoming poorer and poorer and poorer because of government malfeasance and bad policies. But they have something, whereas the poor, they have something too. They have been marginalized in that sense. The white working class has been marginalized. And that there is this wanting to fight back. But at the same time, that group has been specifically tabooized. And that, in fact, because of the English system is a fear of, in other words, the middle class fears, they have the fear of reverting back to the English class system matters. In other words, that much of the English middle class today is a overcoming of their lower class origins. and it's a forgetting of their origins. And they're welcomed in the middle class as long as they play to the middle class, this rejection of the lower class origins. So therefore, there is this, even though there is the kind of rebelling against posh, right? But maybe you don't want to be posh, but you don't want also to be seen as lower class. You want to be seen as part of the correct group. It gives you promotion. It gives you opportunity. It gives you access to mobility and change. Whereas the other thing is you become compartmentalized. And if you do anything wrong, you're crushed. You're seen as a threat and as a thing. Let's just compare Tony Roberts and Tony, Mr. Yaxie's crimes and misdemeanors to the crimes and misdemeanors of what's her name, the labor minister who lied about her CV, who engaged in questionable, Yvette Cooper. You want to look at that case and look from the point of view of actual crimes. The crimes of Yvette Cooper are much more fraud than what ultimately put Roberts, Yaxie in jail originally, which was the idea that he was doing bank fraud. Well, the bank fraud was he was already targeted politically, and they went after him, and they found a crime. But because he was working class and seen as a threat, he was punished harshly. Whereas, oh my God, it's an innocent mistake. In other words, the class differentiation of class resentment. There is also this fear of this middle class of falling back. Now, in other words, I'm going to make a point here. It's going to offend some of my conservative friends in America. The attitudes of the London middle class really echoes that of the new Southerners, the white middle class Southerners in the United States post 1940s, 45, 46 to the 60s, okay, to the moment of the Civil Rights Movement. You have to remember that the rise of the white middle class that happens in the South happened after the Civil War. There was this contest immediately after the Civil War and the end of slavery. The former yeoman farmers were mostly lost their property, and they became sharecroppers. Some slaves stayed sharecroppers, but then some slaves, because they had skill bases, became professionals. And there was this rise in the South of the black middle class, professional middle class, working the lower middle class professionals. Remember that most of the skilled jobs that you did in the South were done by slaves. In other words, the skilled laboring class was basically a slave class. And therefore, after the end of slavery, these blacks were prospering in a higher level to degree than whites. And this is the resentment that happened in the South. This is the beginning of the resentment of the lower class, lower whites, who were not. The upper plantation class. They, of course, they were very liberal. They had a much more open view to the blacks. It wasn't them that's leading Jim Crow. It will be the lower class whites who were, which will be important for the restoration of democratic rule in the South. Will be against them. Now, up until the 1930s, 20s, up to the 1920s and 1930s, the Supreme Court, blocked effort by states to regulate trade. This is the so-called, the cases that prevented government. This is the kind of classic argument. Oh, we're protecting the 14th Amendment and the Equality Clause and the prohibition of states was being used to deny state governments the right to interfere with contract and the right to interfere with trade. And therefore, this is a very important understanding. Thus, this really ironically led to, even though blacks were not given political rights in the South, the African Americans had a growing prosperity. You can see this in the Tuskegee movement. You can see this in a lot of things that was happening in the South. And therefore, this is what's interesting. Therefore, there was this resentment of the white class. You see, this is, you go look at, people want to talk about the Tulsa riots, the Tulsa purge in Tulsa in the 1920s. Well, yeah, it leads to that moment. Now, why am I talking about this? With the New Deal, with the Democratic victory of the New Deal, and the attempting to force against the court interfering, Congress permitted these policies. And the deal was the Southern Democrats demanded that, okay, we'll let you have your New Deal, but if you're going to develop the South, it's going to be Jim Crow. You can bet. Eleanor Roosevelt can champion blacks as much as she wants, but Franklin, if you want to get anything passed on your legislative agenda, you're going to need us Southern Democrats, and we need to deliver things to our white work. We're not going to give the Negro the vote, but we need to deliver goodies to our white people, the white working class, and the idea of creating a new prosperous middle class. So the idea of this new middle class that happened in the South, it was a byproduct of the economy, the moving Jim Crow from political sphere to the economic sphere. In other words, state government started regulating the ability of licenses and things like that. And therefore, African Americans, who were very much the leaders in many of these things, were now being denied the right to do these things, having a license to be a plumber and things like this. And this is what slowly led to a migration to the northern cities all through the 1920s and 1930s, as this skilled labor class was now being denied their political, not only political rights, but also economic rights. And at this same time, this granting of licenses and monopoly rights, economic rights, on provisions of things that they were no longer competing with African American labor, the rise of the lower middle class whites, who now with their status, who used to be sharecroppers and things like that, now were the tradesmen, now were the middle class, now were the shopkeepers, now were this. This is growing. This is a growing middle class that's emerging in the South in the 1930s, 40s, post-war specifically, with all the post-war money aid and the development of post-war things. Yes, this also leads to some experience of Southerners to go see that the black, seeing what the Nazis did and the role that black soldiers played in the air war and also the ground war, that leads them to change their mind. Some people will change their mind, but most don't. Particularly, they don't because it's economic. Okay. Now, why am I talking about this? Well, what the fuck does this have to do with this? England. Well, the same dynamic is at play. When the blacks wanted their rights in the 1950s and 60s, it's this group, the middle class whites, who only have their status maybe one generation as middle class. 1, 2 at most. 1, 2 at most in the 1950s and 60s. It's 50s, 60s, 7. One generation at best. 2 generations by 60s and 70s, 2 generations. Why is this important? Because they feared losing everything. And therefore, this is why the why such middle class resistance, working class and middle class resentment and resistance to the civil rights movement. Now, how is this relevant to the English example? Well, same problem. It's not that they're in other words, the English model is that by showing, in other words, by being nice. This is what David Starkey said this: the sin of English is being nice. In other words, the desire to be nice, the desire to be middle class. The middle class person is not vulgar. He's not this. He's accommodating. He doesn't tend to be bullying. He tends to be condescending to. He condescends to his subordinates and his superiors. But condescension is showing respect. It's being deferential and showing respect, or at least being polite. You show deference, respect to the aboves, and you show deference by being polite to the inferior subordinates. And that this is the idea of, therefore, the new minorities are kind of like this. But the problem is that the significant identity from 1945 on is the rise in the 1930s, 1940s, the post-war world. These basically people from the children of the working classes became middle class. And they had something to lose by being seen as lower class. Their identity and their class identification could be, if it's stripped away from them, their status and in other words, their identity as being part of this now acceptable middle class. Therefore, they had to adapt a behavior and abandon their family histories and their family identity. So thus, this is why there's not that much sympathy by this middle class, this urbanized professional middle class. As London grows powerful and power, and the smaller cities decline, and London grows bigger and bigger, this now blob, as Starkey rightly puts it, of this professional middle class that's highly educated. It's overeducated. It's university based. It's in other words, and the idea is, I go to university. I'm much smarter than these plebes, these Geordies and these working class skips. There is this identity of being superior to, but the superiority is then tied to a adaptation of certain ways of behaving, of certain we're nice, we don't take extreme positions, we act kind of like moderately, we have to be civil, we don't talk, we talk at we don't revert to our older localized languages. We maybe estuary English to some degree, but therefore this is this element here. And I think this is how we have to understand the unwillingness of the English middle class to be willing to look at what's happening with the lower class and to the grooming. Okay, the cost to you, if you were an urbanized middle class person, for the second you say, hey, the grooming gangs are real, there's a problem here. Oh my God, you're a racist. That means I'm not a good boy, not a good girl. I'm extreme. I must not be extreme. We must not talk about. I mean, this is in many ways the argument of why, what was his name? The River of Blood. Enoch Powell's River of Blood speech, which was prescient to the problems that were going to happen in England. Now he gave this when it was in 1968. Okay, this is right then. He did it. He was very precedent to the problems. But the problem was he was so blunt. He was too blunt. He was too honest. And the argument was, well, you can't. Well, he made it impossible for us. That speech made us unable to talk about this. This is the same kind of argument that is used that, oh, because of Joe McCarthy, we couldn't deal with the communists. You know, this Joe McCarthy ruined, McCarthy and McCarthy's behavior was, and his crudeness and his bad manners made it impossible. It so poisoned the critique of communism that we could no longer, therefore, anti-communist position was toxicized because of McCarthy, right? Senator McCarthy. So the same thing with Powell's speech, Eunuch Powell's speech, which in many ways today looks kind of moderate, but at the time it was, oh my God, he transgressed a lot. He said the thing we should not say. Oh my God, he was a little too blunt. The metaphor of the river of bloodline. Oh my God, that's a little too much. Oh my God, that was like crossing a line, man. Oh, and because of that, we can't talk about it ever again. Okay, this is the problem of this is something I reminded that Sagan once said a couple of years ago, talking about Rousseau. Rousseau on the bourgeois. There's something about the bourgeois mentality. The bourgeois mentality wants to belong. It wants to do, but its status is artificial, and it's not real. And because of the status of that regard, it is afraid of losing its status. Well, on that note, I think we're at the end today. I think I'm at enough. I'm at an hour and 11 minutes, over 12 minutes. We had a lot of people here coming back and forth. We had only three or four people say, hey, I liked it. I hope people will like the video. Please hit the like buttons if you liked it. If you come back and encourage your friends, hey, come back, and you're back on the background. Like the video, please. It helps the algorithm. I think next week I will try to do something. This is the last of our February, right? This is the end of February. Tomorrow is March 1st. This is the end of February. This is not a leap year, so we won't have the extra day. I hope you guys all have a good time. I told you what I'm going to be doing. I'm going to be writing and teaching. I hope everyone will come see me, are watching the daily episodes on the discourses and enjoying them. I hope next week next Friday, we'll do something. I probably won't be here on April. I might have to make a recording for April. Yeah, April 4th. I'm going to be in America for April 4th. So I'm going to have to probably make a video, record it, and have it ready for you guys in lieu of a live stream. But we'll see what happens. Well, that's it. If you like the videos, hit the like button, hit the share button if you do it. If you're not watching it live, you can do it afterwards and like this. Put your comments in the comment thing. It's important to do that in that sense. The comments are there for the purpose, so they can put the comments in there. I respond to them when I see them and things like this, and maybe I'll address them in a question. I hope you guys had a good time today, and you can follow me in social media, links below. You can follow me too on my academic social media, the links below those. And of course, you can buy my book, through Patreon. If you want to contribute help, you can do so through Patreon or Subscribestar, or you can buy one of my books listed below. The available books through your local bookstore, but also you can do it through an online distributor like Amazon, Barnes & Noble, things like that, or you through the publishers. So again, it was good to see you guys. I hope you had a good time, and I know I pissed Bilson, no, Jeremy Boswell had no idea what I was talking about. So I probably pissed him off. He was here. I've been listening for 2 minutes and have no idea what you're talking about. Well, okay. I hope you all have a good time and have a good weekend. And I will see you next time around. Bye-bye.